Hi, it's Josh Goldberg here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm making a short video on why it is such a bad idea to take a narcissist or someone with borderline personality disorder to couples counseling. So as you know, I work with people all over the world that are in relationships that have narcissistic personality disorder, CPTSD, borderline personality disorder, and so on. And I don't get through a week without at least hearing one disaster story of a couple going to therapy or counseling, couples counseling, where with someone that has narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, and for it to go horribly wrong. It's always the same story. The narcissistic person or the borderline person will reframe and put on the whole victim position in the session. And if the therapist or the counselor is properly educated and actually competent, they will pick up on this and just send each person away to go work on themselves. And if the counselor or the therapist is uneducated and incompetent, which is most of the time, sadly, they will fall for this story and the other person will tend to get the blame for the narcissistic or the borderline person's behavior. So today I'm just going to be explaining why it's such a bad idea to go to couples counseling and therapy when someone does have narcissistic personality or borderline personality. And I'm going to be explaining it from a very basic perspective of Freudian psychology with ego defense mechanisms and just a little bit of spiritual teachings from Jewish philosophy. Okay, so to start off with, every single human being is instinctually trying to avoid feeling pain and pursuing pleasure. Okay, this is every human being on the face of the earth. Pain avoidance, pursuing pleasure. So both the borderline person and the narcissist are defensive personality structures to protect a huge amount of unresolved pain from a traumatic and abusive childhood, okay? Attachment trauma, childhood abuse, emotional neglect. So both the borderline person and the narcissist are both defensive personalities to protect this pain. So a grandiose narcissist, you probably wouldn't get them to come to couples counseling or couples therapy. However, the vulnerable or fragile narcissist that does play the victim with you will go to therapy, and the borderline person also will be quite reluctant to go to couples counseling. But both of these personality types, the covert narcissist and the borderline person, at times will go to couples counseling with you, but don't get your hopes up. It's not to overcome their pain, it's to basically avoid abandonment and to just keep you hooked in, okay? They're not going to heal in the session. And the reason is, I like to explain it with an example of putting your hand on a hot frying pan, okay? If someone puts their hand on a hot frying pan, they will automatically, as a reflex, take their hand off, okay? Because pain avoidance, as I said, human beings avoid pain naturally. So you taking your borderline partner or your narcissistic partner to couples counseling is basically like holding their hand and trying to put it onto a hot frying pan. Now, if you do that with an actual frying pan with someone, they will do whatever they have to do to not experience this pain of putting their hand on a hot frying pan. Even if they have to hurt you in order to not be burnt, they will do that. And that's exactly what happens in counseling sessions and couples therapy with borderline people and narcissistic people. They become so defensive and so aggressively defend and avoid feeling their own pain. They will actually reframe, make up lies, make themselves out to be the victim, make a whole scheme in order to make you look bad and hurt you in order so that they can avoid feeling their own unresolved pain, which is intense pain, by the way. So this is why it doesn't work, because they will hurt you in order to avoid their own pain, just like the frying pan example. And this is why I've never heard of it working. I don't think it will ever work. Like I said before, the borderline person and the narcissistic personality disorder are both defensive personalities to avoid severe unresolved childhood pain. And on top of the pain avoidance, which is naturally programmed into us, both the borderline person and the narcissist, on top of that, have huge amounts of abandonment anxiety and fear of rejection. So that just adds to their defensiveness. It adds to their toxic behaviors of trying to get through this couples counseling session by making you look bad, reframing situations, playing the victim. And the reason why they do this on top of the regular pain avoidance that everyone has is, like I said, abandonment anxiety. They don't want to expose themselves of any faults or any flaws or any unresolved issues out of fear that you're going to leave them, and that's going to be a huge narcissistic injury to them. And the borderline person is obviously very fearful of abandonment also. So this is why couples therapy and couples counseling does not work. It's counterproductive. Most of the time, I would say 99.9%, because I'm not going to say 100%, but like I said, I've never heard of this working. The partner of the borderline person or the narcissistic person leaves the session feeling attacked, frustrated, scammed, wrongly judged, irritated, because the narcissistic person and the borderline person are not going to be genuine in the session. They're not going to turn up as themselves. They're going to make stuff up. They will hurt you in order to defend their own pain. And this is what happens. I hear it week in, week out, at least one disaster story per week. So if couples counseling and couples therapy is so unsuccessful and so destructive to the healing process, what should happen if someone has a borderline spouse or a narcissistic spouse? So if they have a narcissistic spouse, the real question is, how successful and how much is the person relying on their false self? If there's too much reliance on the false self, they probably won't get to that place that they need to get to in order to overcome their unresolved emotional trauma and their pain. So that's why narcissists don't often become well and healed, okay? Because it is a false self-protection of an underlying borderline structure. Now, the borderline person that doesn't have a false self, they do often make progress and heal and overcome their past trauma. So what should happen is with a borderline spouse is that they should go to a counselor or a therapist that understands trauma and that supports them and encourages them and even challenges them to take them to the places inside themselves where they can experience and overcome and let go of this pain, develop healthier thinking patterns, build emotional skills, develop communication skills. This takes a lot of time, and it certainly should be done by themselves without you in the room, okay? Because they're not going to confront their pain with you in the room, okay? They're already very defensive. And even with a skilled and experienced counselor and therapist, it's not easy to take them to the places where they can confront their pain and their trauma that they have been avoiding for a long period of time. So your job is in supporting them the best that you can if they are in the process of healing by themselves. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any experiences of being in couples counseling with a borderline person or a narcissist, please, if you want to share, put in the comment section. We would like to read about this. If you have any questions, if you are struggling in a relationship with a borderline person or a narcissistic person, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for future content, and we look forward to seeing you in future videos.